Hey guys, like, comment, subscribe. We have another interview today. We have our fourth guest. We have a former musician, MMA fighter, current MMA analyst. This guy has truly done it all. We have Robin Black, ladies and gentlemen. Let's welcome him here. All right, so like we said, we have Robin Black. Robin, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me, guys. So
Definitely.
you're in North York. Where are
Yeah.
you two guys located?
So I'm North York, like I said. Alex, you are. I can't even remember half the time.
Alex,
I'm
where the hell are you?
I'm close to Ottawa. I'm in the Ottawa Valley, in Cobden, just a small town out there. So it's a little bit far away from the big city.
Yeah, and that's a good thing right now.
Exactly.
And speaking of right now, what have you been doing to keep up with everything? Are you still traveling for everywhere? How's it go? What's Robin Black been up to for the most part?
So what are we now? We're January, we're almost February, so it's been 11 months. So I was in remember that day when everything shut down?
Yeah, definitely.
I was in Connecticut. I was at the Mohegan Sun Casino. It was Bellator 242 or something, and I was there. And on the fights were Friday. Fights were Saturday, Friday the 13th, which is when they shut everything down. And on Wednesday, we were here like, oh shit, a lot of stuff's happening. And on Thursday, they said, no audience. We're doing the fights, but no audience.
Yeah.
And then Friday morning, we did, they announced, we started hearing rumors, and there was people setting up the cage that had a cold or a cough of some kind. And Scott Coker pulled the plug. He's like, you know what, guys, everyone's getting paid. We'll just shut this thing down. I got into a car and I drove home. From Connecticut to Toronto, 8 hours straight home. And then from that day, things started disappearing.
Yeah.
So I was supposed to commentate the Olympics. I was going to commentate boxing, taekwondo, and karate for CBC for the Olympics. So
that's
that
awesome.
was gone right away. Yeah, I know. It was so cool. And then all of a sudden, that didn't exist. And then I was traveling for Bellator once a month. So that got shut down. And then I had 12 shows in 2020 booked in France for a brand new MMA show. That went away. So all travel essentially went away. And we had to figure out how to do what you do. In my case, analyze martial arts in a way that makes something of value for people, the viewer, and for anybody that would be part of the process or a fight show. And so I started to do that. I started to analyze things in different ways. I started doing Zoom breakdowns with fighters where we would look at their stuff together. I sort of expanded how I build my analysis videos. And then I rebuilt the studio. And now I just, like everybody, you figure out how to do the thing that you have expertise or creates value in a world where you can't go anywhere, do anything.
Yeah, no, I completely forgot that Bellator actually had an event that got kind of canned last minute because everyone just focuses on the UFC event that happened for. Are you currently still, like, I know Bellator is technically back on doing events now. Are you traveling for them now, or are you kind of stuck in this limbo where you're in Canada and you can't?
Yeah, limbo. I'm definitely but they are, so my business, just sort of the art of what I do is I look at fights in a meaningful way, try to learn interesting or valuable things about it and share it with people. That's the art that I do. How I made that into pay my bills was I do that for people.
Yeah.
So Bellator is the biggest one I work for. They are my largest. I don't call them employers because I sort of make independent contractor deals with people where they say, you could do something that's valuable for us. Here's some money, go do that thing. It lets me do it my way primarily. Bellator is my biggest partner and also the one that is the most inclined to tell me to do it my way. They're like, yeah, do that thing you do it different, do it, explore things in your own way, try to innovate as much as possible. So they're my favorite, probably. I also work for TSN in Canada. You guys are in Canada. So in TSN, TSN is the UFC broadcast partner. So that's where I get kind of my UFC work and where I keep a foot in the UFC. But and then I do analysis for people in Southeast Asia and South America, Africa. I've been analyzing this African martial art called Dambe. It's a traditional Nigerian martial art, super cool. They fight with one wrapped roped hand, and they call it the spear. And then they use the front hand to kind of tangle and block and stuff. They call it the shield. It's very cool, 1,000-year-old martial art. I analyze Lethwei, which is a martial art of 9 limbs, including a headbutt in Southeast Asia, in Myanmar. So I figured, so my job has ended up being, I have all these different partnerships, which I really like. It gives me the most freedom. My goal is to learn more and get better at what I do over the next 5 or 10 years. This, I think, coordinates that. So Bellator, but to answer your question, I have a tendency to just meander around thoughts. Bellator is my primary partner, and there's a lot of cool shit I can do with them and for them, not traveling. So that's good. We're building, I'll tell you all some really cool things we're working on. But then also, I like to travel, be there, speak cage side. They can literally airdrop me from the cage side. The guy will airdrop me the finish, and I'll build a breakdown literally right there, and then just go in the back and voice it and put it up into the air. And then I can talk to the fighters while I'm there. I can analyze it in real time. So I love doing that, and Bellator likes that. They see value in that. But right now, the travel, my guess is by March, and maybe April at the latest. If things get slightly better or not worse, I think I'll probably be traveling for them again.
Yeah, and just before we move on from that, you mentioned a lot about kind of the control that they give you, that freedom. And I know before you worked for Fight Network, like you're very much a producer in your own right. Was that kind of what prevented you, I guess, from going more deeply with the UFC in terms of the jobs you were doing for them? Because I know you did a lot of work for them.
Yes, 100%. The freedom, yeah. So of course I love covering the UFC, especially for TSN. Because like now I'm working with Canadian homies in a fairly non-corporate environment for such a big company. But yes, the UFC, and this isn't anything to do with, and Dana White is sort of a friend, and he really likes my work, and I click with him really well. It's not got to do with any of the kind of the people that people see. It's more the structure. Like big companies are very fucking difficult to innovate within. They have and for very good reason on their side as well. If you're going to put on, what do they do in a typical year? Almost 40 shows a year. Then they do others. They're building all layers of content in all these ways. You need structure to do that, to be able to do that. So they need that structure. That structure is bad for me. So I'm not a good fit in that environment. There was definitely like times, I have a saying. I'm sure I've heard it somewhere, so I shouldn't even say it that way because it's not my saying. But like, garbage is made. If you want to make shit, get a committee, right? Like, if you get 7 layers of ingredients that all need to approve something, it's probably going to be all the edges are going to be smoothed off it.
Yeah.
All the risk is going to be gone from it. All the daring, all the new, all the edgy, all the uncertain, all of that is going to be removed. And that's what a company of that size is like. I'm not a good fit for that environment. Now, I can be a good fit. A person like me could be a good fit if you found the right way to use me. And I explored working for one champion. And with that comes a lot of limitation too. You work for a big company, you might have to be fairly exclusive. If I can cover the UFC for TSN as a broadcast partner and still, really get my like exciting, cool, innovative work with Bellator. I couldn't do that. The UFC wouldn't allow that. Chael works for ESPN and Bellator. Robin works for TSN and Bellator. So there are a few of us who can find a way to make that work, but typically you can't. I went to Singapore and had meetings with one. I was there for 12 days and I had like 5 different meetings, interviews, stuff. And I was exploring that idea there, but it's sort of the same thing. It's like, in an environment like that, the best way I could kind of do what I love to do, which is try to find different weird ways to look at martial arts in a meaningful way, would be the role that I would see one day, if such a role could exist, would be like resident analyst. That you were your own thing. People could bring you in. We bring in our resident analyst to be on the desk, or we can bring him into a meeting to discuss business, or we can bring him into a marketing and see if he's got anything to add. But where you could be your own sort of island of your own information and your own ideas. That I don't bring enough value for somebody to make such a role for me currently. But if I did build enough value, maybe such a role could exist. But short of that, yeah, it's just the big company, a big overly structured, hyper layered, executive heavy company like that, I'm a bad fit for it.
No, I could definitely imagine that.
And you just mentioned that you went over and seen one championship as well. Do you believe that they are coming up as potentially number 2 or number 3 organization behind UFC and currently maybe Bellator right now? Like, are they the next big company right now?
That's not the feeling I get.
Okay.
It's very difficult to say, though. We are able to access a lot more information than we ever were. Mm-hmm. So when somebody claims, I'm the #1 skater on planet Earth, or, more people watch my cooking show than anyone, we all have the capacity to analyze that a little easier. Such information is available. But at the same time, it's very difficult to gauge because I don't know how big that company may be in China. I don't know, is there 1.5 billion people in China? I mean, if it's massive, then it's much bigger than I can fathom. But I don't get that feeling when I look at just, anecdotally look at their social stuff. Often people in the promotion business believe that bigger, more, yelling, greatest, best, most is powerful. They believe that, and so it becomes a part of how they build their shows. It becomes a part of the story they tell about their own companies and whatever. I don't believe that's powerful when everybody's doing it. If the PFL is telling you, we're the #2 show in the world, and one championship is saying, we're the Pepsi to UFC's Coke, and, if they're all doing it, I don't believe any of them. And I was able to patiently, as I built my skills and found my own role and found where I could fit into the business while doing it my own way and having fun and stuff, I was able to take my time and see what was a good Bellator for a bigger sort of commitment from me and from them. Bellator was the best one that fit for me. I believe what they say. I was able to go in and see, the fights. This is when you go to the root of it. This is the big part that is very difficult to convince the average person. But the 2 guys fighting on fight #3 in the UFC are not better than the 2 guys fighting in fight #3 in the PFL or Bellator or one. They're not. If you ask 100 people who watch fighting, they'll say, and you say, which is the better fighters? 90 of them will point to the UFC because they'll succumb to the marketing that they've consumed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They have been marketed to. A message has been sold to them and they will succumb to it and they'll believe it's this. But I know that's not so. So I want my goal is to analyze the realities of martial combat at the highest level possible. I can now access that if I work for the PFL, if I work for Bellator, if I work for one. So I don't have to choose one, and I get to do many of them, like I said. So I'm very happy about that. But as far as spending more time and a deeper connection to it ends up being Bellator for me. I like them the most. I like the people. I like the way they structure their business. I like the way they think. And I think the biggest one for me is most of them are martial artists. When you're around a lot of people from the UFC executives and stuff, they're business people. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Badass brown belts, black belts in business. You go hang out with Bellator people. Scott Coker is like a 3rd or 4th degree, I think. Certainly a black belt in Taekwondo, was a lifelong martial artist. He's got a collection of old Bruce Lee shit where Bruce Lee wrote on napkins that he bought. Oh, no way. Stuff. Like, yeah. Like Scott Coker's an obsessive martial artist, right? So, and Scott, there's video of him fucking doing crazy bending rebar with his neck when he was young and exploring all these different aspects of martial arts. Rich Chow, who is the matchmaker. Rich is a brown belt under Jean-Jacques Machado in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like a real high-level martial artist. Mike Kogan, who's the other executive. Mike Kogan fought, and Mike is shorter than me. I'm 5'6", and Mike is now lean. He's maybe 140 pounds. He does a lot of running. He's super fit. But he fought Douglas Lima in a kickboxing fight. Oh my! Yeah, I know.
He weighs what, 190 walking around? Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure. And I met Mike 10 years ago when I was commentating the Score fighting series in Canada, and Mike back then was probably 160 or 70 pounds, a little more jacked, carried a lot more weight, but still like a short, stout, 170-pound muscular guy against Douglas Lima, who was probably 22 at the time. Like, these are real martial artists. This company has that sinew of martial arts, the martial artist path in it. And that matters to me. So I like it. I'm happy. I don't think I've ever sort of been as content with the scenario. If they were to come to me and say, please work exclusively for us. I'd actually consider it. Can't say I wouldn't necessarily do it because I have it so good right now. You know, when I get on a plane and fly to Southeast Asia and commentate Lethwei in a ring in a 1,200-year-old building while people are playing musical instruments I've never seen in my life during the fight, and people are expressing a 2,000-year-old bare knuckle headbutting martial art of the Burmese people. When I'm there, I'm like, I couldn't give this up for anything. You know, when I'm analyzing that Dambe, that Nigerian martial art, I couldn't give that up for anything. But of all of them, if they said, come in, work for us, you know, let's figure out, that's the one today I would heavily consider for sure.
Interesting. And with that being said, too, mentioning Lethwei, why do you think sports like Lethwei, Muay Thai are so much bigger overseas than they are in North America, where like they still get views here, but in terms of events being held on here, we never really see large professional events being held here?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I don't think it's the art, because the viewership of them has gone up a lot.
Yeah.
So when people will see it online, if you go right now so I commentate bare knuckle boxing in London, England, and they have had it in other cities in England before as well. And if you go on Facebook or YouTube and you put in that BKB, it's called BKB. It's like, that's their trademark and the brand bare knuckle boxing. It is sort of has a lineage to old sort of fairly traditional, you know, Irish travelers and British and Welsh. And it's super cool. I love it. You look at some of these videos, they've been viewed 2 million times, 3 million times, 4 million times. There's one that I commentated on Facebook, and I looked at it, it's 500,000 views in its Facebook embed.
Wow.
People are watching this, right? And kickboxing, I think it's the packaging, but all of these slightly more exotic martial arts, from bare knuckle boxing to all of these sort of international ones, 5 years ago, there was very little appetite for them. Now there is. And among the reasons, I think, is the UFC, as your goal is to become bigger and more mainstream, you know what you do? You become bigger and more mainstream. And there's a certain amount of your early audience who doesn't like that. You know, when your favorite band becomes too mainstream, now you kind of jump off the thing. At one time, the earliest, and if you were an early martial art, with the UFC came along and they gave something that as a martial arts obsessive that you'd always wanted. And it was new, it was daring, it was edgy, it was innovative, provocative, and it was all those things. It's not those things now. It's just an alternative to the NFL or the NBA, which was their goal. So that's not a complaint or a criticism. That's the result. But when you do that, your early audience, who were the innovators, the early adopters, the people who like edgy and different and weird, they don't care now, or they care far less. And so now they are now primed to be interested in these other things. Kickboxing is the biggest one that for some reason, I think personally, the flaws of a lot of these things, and I think this, as my specialty is analyzing martial arts, but when you analyze anything deeply, you see it in all things, right? The lessons that are learned from computer analysis can be applied to relationships, right? Like, this is the nature of it. And often beliefs and the formula is the flaw, and the language is the limitation, right? So the formula of, here's two guys in a suit. All right, today we're here at this arena, and we got this unbelievable matchup between two epic warriors. And in our main event, and then they roll the thing and they have the same, that formula, once you repeat it over and over and over again, it commodifies itself. And I think when we just turn it on and it's kickboxing, and we don't really know these two guys they're talking about. We don't know the two guys that are on TV talking about it. We don't really have a connection to its brand. None has ever been made. And it's just never kind of taken hold. Glory, I think, is probably the best show. It just didn't take hold. Maybe it would take 2 more years, 3 more years, 5 more years. You got to find money as a business to keep going that long. So I think it's just us. What we do and don't connect to. I don't think it's the fighting, because, you know, if you pause on, and again, if you look at the numbers on YouTube, when people can access it for free at their leisure in their own way, it's massive. Yeah. So it's the shows, the package that I think we don't like.
That's definitely interesting to think about.
It's great to hear you say that quick commentary. To me, it just sounds like a promo that you're saying for like a wrestling event.
Yeah.
Do you ever have any interest in branching off into that? It sounds like the way you're talking that it'd be the less WWE, that's more the corporate style, more maybe something like AEW. But is that something that you can see yourself doing?
Yeah, like you remind me like a manager, like Paul Bearer or someone like that.
So very interesting. If you asked me that question 2 years ago, I would have said absolutely no interest whatsoever. But now, so Jake Hager is a friend.
Yeah.
And when I do see what they're doing, what I love about it is, and you talk to them. I don't know Jericho well, but we're both from Winnipeg, and we know people in common, and we've had the odd sort of connection here and there. They are, I think, taking their thing and doing exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. They're like, it's repetitive, too formulaic, too narrative driven. The beliefs of what we think work, and so we keep doing them, actually don't work. And we believe we'll do it a different way, and that'll work. And so that way that they are doing it is rooted in storytelling and mythology connected to fighting. And I'd be interested in messing around with AEW in some capacity for sure. Even there's been times where there was once a time where people didn't talk about how wrestling moves were done. I think that time's fucking past, probably, right? Like,
definitely.
If somebody picks a guy up and the two together jump in such a way to make a high impact but protect the guy from breaking his neck, I can break that down. It's just body mechanics. Instead of two athletes with conflicting objectives, they're working together. But it's still just a tandem body mechanic scenario, and that's what I do, right? So I could do that, and I would be interested in that much, much more than I would have been a year or two ago. One, the world has changed, but I've changed. I see it differently now. I'm interested in different aspects of it. What I don't, like when you reference when I was there, here we are with 2 epic wars, that thing, I feel, and I'm careful. I don't want to criticize people who work in the field, especially because so many of them are my friends, real friends. John Anik is a real friend. Joe Rogan is an actual friend. These are my friends. I like these people, but and so I'm not talking about those two, and I'm not talking about anyone specifically, but the machine of it. A lot of times it sounds like if you cast a film and you said just write some shit commentators would say, it sounds like a lot of the time that's what commentating is. The shot on the two guys with the thing, and then we move to this and we zoom, we go to a board, tail of the tape. When a guy once came up in a meeting, hey, what should we do? We'll put a board up and we'll call it the tail of the tape. If you told that guy in 1947 or whenever it was that was going to be the name of it for fucking 70 years, he would have never believed you, right? He would have never believed you. He was like, what? Like nobody's going to come up with anything else? We're just going to, it's the tail of the tape. Like, fuck, we're supposed to innovate. Like life is about innovation, but television production is about executing formulas efficiently and effectively in ways that you don't fuck anything up and get fired, right? So the objectives are different. The objectives of us could be, let's learn more stuff and see it in different ways and continue to be challenged in what we see, and that might excite us. We don't know. But the objectives of the people who make the thing are make it the same, create a language, stick to it, repeat the narratives, execute on formulas night in, night out, rap. Great job, guys. Great job, everybody. And go the fuck home. That ain't me. And that's not what I didn't get into this to be able to say knockout power with both hands, striker versus grappler in a stylistic matchup. If this guy can get it to the ground, he's going to win. I didn't get into this to do that. I got into this to be challenged and learn and grow and study martial arts and be thrilled by that journey. So it's a weird one. It's a strange one for me. It's seeing it and watching it and being in it and contributing and stuff. It's all very strange now because I get further and further from it. So it sounds more and more ridiculous when I hear television commentary. It sounds like they're kidding to me now.
No, but even what you said at the beginning of that, I think could be super helpful. Where like, even though they put the message at the beginning of a wrestling event saying like, don't try this at home, like everyone tries it at home. Like I was a kid, like all we were doing was doing the John Cena F you to each other over and over. Versus you have a guy like you going out there and actually maybe showing people how not to at least hurt yourselves for at least like a suplex. I think that'd be actually super helpful from at least that perspective too.
Sure, we might save a couple of severe injuries, but I think we also might, like, you know, I think you could also show how fascinating it is. Like, it seems strange to me. I mean, and I don't watch that much AEW, so what I've seen, the first thing I thought is these guys are taking most of the structures and formulas that people think you have to do, and they're saying we don't have to do this. And that's what I take from watching it, and the little bit I know Chris Jericho and Hager and these guys. I think that's the thinking, and I've talked to Jake about it a little bit for Bellator in the context of creating drama and fighting. I sat with him for about an hour on a bus from New York to Connecticut and did an interview with him for DAZN. It ended up being about a 8 or 10 minute clip on DAZN, but it was a good hour and 15. And so we talked about that kind of thing a lot. But I think these two guys are acting out a storyline and then getting into a thing and then physically telling you a story to create drama. I don't know why any of us would pretend that's not so. That's fucking cool.
Yeah.
Like, why do we have to pretend that's not so? Like, and I think that's a part of their story. And it's the same thing with fighting. You know, we will sit there and we'll have a conversation about, you know, winner gets a title shot, knowing that our conversation is nonsensical. How that works is dependent on audience and popularity and stuff, not about whether this guy wins or doesn't win this fight. We'll have conversations about titles, knowing that the UFC title, or any title for that matter, diminishes in its value as time goes on. When you were one of 3 UFC heavyweight champions ever, that was fucking rare and scarce. Yeah. When you're one of 90, you become part of a long history. It's a different thing. I don't know why we would all sit around and literally, I watch people do this. You know, the UFC is going to be on ABC. So, guys, you know, let's talk about how this, you know, it's going to bring new eyeballs to the sport. And, you know, what message is the UFC going to show? Who are they going to put in the main event with all these new eyeballs? It's like, first of all that conversation is nonsensical because nobody fucking watches cable television, right? Right? Like, if you ask anyone under 30, tell me the 3 big networks, they'll say Netflix, Amazon Prime, and whatever, right? If you ask anyone under 20, they'll say Instagram, TikTok, and, you know, Facebook or whatever. Like, this isn't real. We're sitting here having conversations about new eyeballs as if we live in a world where any human beings are just sitting there at home in front of ABC going, oh, normally my farm update's on, but now guys are fighting in a cage. My new eyeballs are now stuck. Like, there's no such thing, right? So we act like the world doesn't change, and we continue to discuss things, promote things, debate things, as if the world is not changed around us. The meaning of the UFC on ABC, or the meaning of, you know, of a guy doing a suplex, or the meaning of Coca-Cola has a jumbo size, that is different than it used to be 10 years ago and 20 years ago. All those things mean different things, and they'll mean different things 5 years in the future as the world changes. So to analyze anything, to be correctly or deeply connected to the world around you, you have to take into account the constant change of reality. And it's exciting. At first, it's scary. You're like, wait a second, the world changes constantly. I could lose my job. Everything could change. What if my wife got sick? You know, but then you realize we all live in a world of non-stop change and complete uncertainty. If you ever thought that wasn't true, you were mistaken. You were living in uncertainty and you were doing just fine, right? You're always just fine in uncertainty because you're always in uncertainty. A meteorite could hit this earth 20 minutes from now. That's truthful. You know, the world is uncertain. So just accept it and allow yourself to be affected and influenced by all the changing world around you. And you end up having a better connection to the reality of what's happening.
No, definitely.
I love the fact that you brought up network TV, because you're right. neither me or Mac there, neither one of us have had network TV ever. We're guys in our 20s. We had it back when we were kids.
How old are you?
I'm 24, and
I'm
he's
25.
25.
Okay.
So yeah.
So from 16 years old, you have never watched network television.
For the most part, I think 1 year I had like a free, like the Rogers Game Center, but other than that, no.
Yeah, no, exactly. So go on. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's all good. But what I was going to mention was Canadian network television would be one of them that you were pretty associated with heavily in 2000s. It's where I personally seen you for the first time was on Muchmusic.
Yeah.
It was a while ago now, but you were there for quite a while. You were definitely one of the faces of that network. And then a couple of years later, I remember hearing you say something along the lines of that Muchmusic has changed. It's not what it used to be. Do you remember what made you first think of that? And if you think it'll ever get popular again?
So I can't imagine. That's really interesting. I don't remember specifically saying that, but it's interesting that you mentioned that, because how we see the world, when I was your age, the idea that I would one day be 35 and then 45 and then 50, I couldn't imagine what that was like. And it was scary, and I didn't think it would be very good. And I thought life got worse when you got older. But there was some actually great things that happened that I wasn't aware of, including that you start to see the cycles of things. And as you see the cycles of things, you're less surprised. And you have a little bit of ability to kind of see the future or react to things or be prepared for things. So if I was noticing at the time that the rise, and let's say MTV, because if anyone's watching and they're American, and for them it was MTV. Same thing. It was our Canadian, very heavily Canadian interpretation. And it really was. It was super Canadian, and we loved it. At one time, people liked music, and then there was a visual added to it. There was no such thing. The music video just didn't exist, or it barely existed. And then in the 80s, all of a sudden it was big. And now we had added a layer, right? So once upon a time, somebody wrote a poem, and then somebody played guitar. And then somebody took the poem and added it on guitar. And then somebody added drums, and all of a sudden you had music. And then they added visuals, and you had a whole other layer to it. Didn't exist, now it exists, right? You added this whole other layer to it. And then that became popular, and that's where you could see it. And when things are new like that, what tends to happen is there become tastemakers, like a filter. How are we doing for time, by the way?
10 minutes.
Okay. I just got to connect with my friend David Mullins. We do a podcast on the mentality of fighting.
Nice.
And if I'm 10 minutes late, he won't mind. There starts to be filters and tastemakers. So there was a collection of people who's like, let's figure out which videos people want to see, and then let's show it to them. And that's what a network like that is. That's what, at its best, UFC Fight Pass could be. Somebody who really can sift through it all and create playlists of fights. And I actually had conversations. There was a guy, Ant Evans, who ran Fight Pass. And even before that, Marshall Zelaznik, who also ran Glory later. And both of those guys loved my work, and I really liked both of them. And we had conversations about creating, being a tastemaker, being somebody who is almost a fight version of a VJ. And in fact, when I moved from Muchmusic to Fight Network, that was the original plan, is that I was going to be kind of like, and so I loved fighting. I played music, and so I worked within the music realm. I played in a band, and I did stuff connected to television. But fighting was my number one passion. So I'd been a martial artist all my life. I started fighting. When I was fighting, I actually went and somewhat to some degree brought and with support from the people that work there, the idea to Fight Network, where I would, do blocks of an afternoon where I would throw to fights and throw to interviews and kind of be like a VJ of fighting. Didn't really click right away, but it was a really neat idea. And I'm remembering it only now. That was a natural progression there. But once we can now all take our device and find any song or any fight or any interview or whatever, it would be very difficult for a television network like a Muchmusic or a fighting version of that or whatever to ever thrive again, because they act as the only thing they can offer us is if they somehow can do a better job of sifting through everything and customizing for us. But the problem with TV is all of us are different. So although one of us might be like, oh my God, I can't turn this shit off. They just keep playing all the videos I love. Other people will hate it. And so you need that personal ability to select. Yeah, it's an interesting thought how it all kind of evolves.
And I think it makes sense what you said too, because even a company like Bell, they recently purchased MTV. So CTV now airs MTV content, which obviously shows they're trying to limit it because, like you said, their crowd is obviously much smaller now.
Yeah, I mean, and music, say that layering thing I said, a poem, and then you add guitar, and then later there's a whole band, and then it's songs, and then it's videos. All of that now, we put that behind another video, or we put it in a video game.
Yeah.
Right. So we're continuing to layer, like we're putting more shit on the hamburger, or we're building a bigger cake or whatever. When you're playing that video game, you hear that song comprised of those instruments written on that thing, and it just fits into the background. Just the song itself isn't enough for 85% of us. Some people love music so much that they don't want any of the other stuff, but not all of us now. And once upon a time, so these are other cool things about being old. I can tell you 20 years ago, everybody could tell you what the #1 record in Canada was. Everybody could tell you what the biggest record in America was. Everyone could tell you who the heavyweight boxing champion of the world was. Everybody knew. Now nobody gives a fuck. Those things don't matter. Like, ask 100 people at random who the heavyweight champion of the world is, and 30 of them will tell you. Ask 1,000 people who the bantamweight champion of the UFC is, and 6 of them will say Peter Yan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're all in different niches. We're all in different niches of things. It's fascinating, like seeing how it's all driven by us. What do we do? What do we like? How are we behaving? What do we want? So it's really fascinating. It's like the study of people.
And with that too, on the music note, could you kind of explain what was it about glam rock that made you get into it? Because obviously, like in your upbringing, things like you mentioned, I think in another interview, Alice Cooper was one of your idols.
Yeah.
Grunge very big in the 90s. And then you kind of just go that like the off route with glam rock. What was it that really made you go that route? What stuck out to it? What stuck out of it to you?
That's really interesting that you bring that up. So the 90s, yeah, very, very astute of you to notice that what I was doing at the time was not cool or not popular, right? If I was doing, if somebody Googled me and was like, oh, I recognize this kind of band. They don't know that I played this, but they've never heard of my song, or maybe they've seen a breakdown. They didn't know I sung in a rock band. If they Googled me, they'd be like, oh, this is like Motley Crue or, Def Leppard or whatever. They could connect to what they think it was.
Yeah.
What they wouldn't necessarily know by that Google or that image, but what you pointed out quite smartly is I came along when that wasn't in. So although I looked like something that was once in, when I did it, it was not cool at all. It was not cool at all. And I liked the imagery. I liked the flash. I liked the entertainment. Somehow I liked, it was very cartoony. And I liked kung fu movies, and I liked, comic books, and I liked these kinds of things. And somehow the imagery of it was connected to that. And so that was a part of it. But I think partly too, if I'm really it's hard to say because memories are not clear, but I think I might have just liked the fact that I was doing something off the beaten track too. Like, I think there's an appeal to me to not do the typical.
Yeah, that's what I
something
felt.
Something about the typical I find distasteful. I don't know why. It's not intentional. It's just how I feel often. Like, and it's as a result, a lot of the time, if I'm going to see the way I see things in a positive way, where pat myself on the back with it instead of a negative way, because everybody is all good. There's good and bad. We all do everything. But if I'm looking at it through a optimistic perspective, I'm often too early on things. So I'll do something. I'll start to if you look at how I was doing breakdowns at the Fight Network in 2014, that's only popular now.
Yeah.
Dan Cormier, Dan Hardy, whatever, when they do something like that, it's only popular now. Things people ridiculed that I said then are very standard parts of fighting, where I talk about space and distance and these things that people said were stupid, they didn't understand, or they thought I was just making up nonsense, now are very, very normal parts of fighting.
Definitely.
But something about So I tend to be that way, and not that I'm ahead of anything. It's just the timing in which I see things, or whatever I'm interested in. I'm interested in. I see something taking shape in 5 years, but I want it now. And so it's not necessarily always a good thing. But something about technology now has allowed, and doing my thing long enough, has allowed me to make a fucking really good living and get to do my thing, and my business is thriving as my own thing.
Yeah.
Because being ahead or not on, or, you know, people will often see something the way that I'm looking at something or the way I want to explore it. And to them, it sounds like nonsense, but in 3 years, it'll be normal. It's not because I'm smarter than that's the timing through which I often see things. But something about technology now allows me that if 1 million people would think something I'm doing is weird or goofy or, you know, dumb or whatever, 100,000 will be like, that's my shit. I love that. And because of the way technology is now, I can find those 100,000. They can follow me on Instagram, or they can follow me on Twitter, or they can, you know, and if 100 people watch this video in the next 6 hours, 10 of them might be like, that's my guy. That's my fucking guy. And there's something about the way technology has changed that if your timing isn't quite right, it suits me pretty well now. I can be the oddball, or I can do things not the conventional way I often just don't like. Something always bothers me when I think partly what it is I think that we humans have a tendency to imitate each other so deeply without knowing it. Mm-hmm. And something about that scares me. So I don't want to do it. And I'll give you the simplest example that hits me, the first one that hits me. So Paul Felder will fight Dan Hooker, and they'll have a great fight. And people say, oh my God, you know, a split decision performance. They'll start using the language. And then they'll say, you know, we got to run it back. And then you'll interview these guys. Oh yeah, let's run it back. You know, if we run it back, I'm down to run it back. You want to run it back? Why the fuck are we all saying run it back? Because we're being taught what language to use.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And some of these languages are super limiting. Language is often the limitation. When a guy goes and another guy's on the ground and we start hitting him, we say, oh, and he's dishing out some ground and pound and it's all over. Why the fuck are we saying ground and pound? This is a straight punch. This is a hook punch. This is an uppercut. This is a guy grabbing an elbow and thrusting down. This is controlling inside. There's a million fascinating things. As soon as you say ground and pound, and we all say it, and then it sticks in our head, and now we've been programmed to say it. Now I can't think about all those other things. Now I dismiss them all. It's all just ground and pound. And those are just the first things that come to mind, but we do it with everything. Something happens and we go, you know, fucking like somebody will pass away in the next, 6 months. Do not fucking say, I'm sorry for your loss. Don't fucking say that. That's a knee-jerk reaction. It's meaningless, right? It's meaningless. Or some military guy, you say, thank you for your service. It's bullshit. You've decided rather than to actually think about something or express a really meaningful or interesting idea, you'll just default to the thing that everybody else said. That shit, I just naturally rebel against it. I can't say, this guy's got knockout power, both hand striker versus grappler in a stylistic matchup. If he gets it to the ground, but if this guy keeps it standing, it's going to be a dynamite fight, Mike. Like, to me, I didn't say a fucking word there. Yeah. If a punch to the liver, if a guy kicks the leg and I say, oh man, he's got to check those. Those, they're going to add up and he's going to lose it. Like, if I say that, if I said anything other than that, any other thing, I would have given you more information than if I said that.
Yeah.
Right? Any other thing, any other thought, so I have a friend, Corey Erdman, and we were in Russia and we were commentating at the World Combat Games. We did 18 different fighting arts. He did 4 or 5. I did color commentary on all 18 with 3 different play-by-play men. And so I worked.
You have to know the rules of. Oh my God.
Everything, yeah, everything. How they work, what works, where these guys are from, everything. So I was months and months and months and months of preparation, but it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. And I learned so much. It forced me to see everything so differently. But there was a day that Corey Erdman and I, day 17, we had been told that this one was streaming only. This one particular martial art was streaming only in one place. So we knew that no one would hear us. But even still, I feel terrible saying this because it just goes against how I think. Because I hold myself to a high standard and I want to fucking kill everything all the time to the very best I could. But something about us being exhausted, nobody watching, we started trying to make each other laugh by just saying cliches. So you say, oh, you know, and we started doing it and neither one of us had spoken about it, but we just kept doing it. It was like, oh man, you know, he's really testing his chin. And then I said, you know, this is going to be about who wants it more. He says, oh, those body shots, they're going to add up in the later rounds. They'll pay dividends. And we just did it all day. And afterwards we laughed and we felt a little bad, even though no one was watching. It goes against but we did it to make ourselves laugh because it was ridiculous. And to me, that has become the norm. When I watch, especially new people, especially new fighters, you know, in a fighter's first 120 shows they're going to do. And it does take that many. At show 100, I listened to show 7 and I realized how bad I was. And at show 300, I've commentated over 500 shows. But if you include all those different martial arts, you know, and amateur fights and World Lethwei and the Wushu World Championships and Taekwondo Championships, all these things, karate, the Pan Am Games, all the things I've done, I've definitely commentated well over 10,000 fights.
Oh my God.
Holy.
So, which would be 1,000 shows.
Yeah.
But I've done 500 or 600 MMA shows, you know, another 100 boxing, another 100 kickboxing, but with all of them well over 10,000 fights. And so, and it has gotten so now I can look back and understand how little I knew after 100 shows. So I have the ability to I've been a guy with 1 show, a guy with 20 shows, a guy with 100 shows, a guy with 400 shows. So I know it. I know what happens and how hard you work and how good you can become at being comfortable in it. When I see a fighter, you know, the UFC is like, oh, we'll put so-and-so on the mic, or you see it and, you know, I see it all the time in the Muay Thai show. They go, we got Muay Thai world champion, this guy, and he's never commentated the show. It's somehow the people in it don't understand what is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll see it and they'll go, oh, well, you know, this guy's going to, you know, show that he wants it. And, you know, and they just do it. They naturally do it. Why do they do it? Because they've heard it done 1,000 times. Why have they heard it done 1,000 times? Because all those commentators heard it done 10,000 times. If you go to the root of what we're doing here, it is not just trying to sound like a commentator. The root of what we're doing here is trying to enrich the experience for the viewer in some meaningful way. And if we just keep saying striker versus grappler in a stylistic match, get it to the ground, dish out some ground and pound, whatever, we're not doing that. We're just going through the formulas over and over again. The crazy thing is people compare things to what they've seen before. So the producer, the boss, a fighter, a commentator, a banker, whatever, they compare and they go, great job, everybody. What they can't do is compare it to what is possible because they don't know what's possible. But this is the life. This is the path, right? You're as you go, you're supposed to look back at your own work and hate it. And then wherever you are now, feeling pretty good about what you know, I'm hoping in 5 years I look back and go, fuck, I knew so little about martial arts, communication, language, technology. I hope in 10 years to look at this conversation and go, God, I was such an idiot. And that will only happen if I just kind of keep on the path and eventually expose your own weaknesses and fix them. And that's what martial artists do.
Absolutely. We know you have to wrap up, obviously short on time. For anyone who hasn't checked it out, would have loved to get to ask you about the GSP documentary, Mind of GSP, I believe you've done before. If anyone can find it, check it out. And just before I let you off the hook, I need one answer, just yes or no, true or fake news, real beef, Gerry Dee, real beef or fake news?
Fake news.
Okay.
Yeah, fake news. But he's a good performer, and to be honest, he's a good friend. And but yes, fake news. Again, 2 years ago, I'd have probably tried to keep that going. Now, you know, truthfully, I really like fucking. It
was so good as a kid. Growing up, I thought it was serious. I remember.
That's because you're a shitty reporter, Gerry. I'll always remember that.
And that's because you have long hair, or blue hair, Robin. That's what he.
Yeah. Oh God, it was so fun. It was so fun. And then we did actually a couple follow-ups. We did a few little follow-ups because we were both working at the Score. Yeah. And little bits and pieces that popped up. They just never hit as well as that one. But yeah, it's that was a really, really cool thing, because although I was working in fighting, I still had that connection to the game of playing a singer in a rock band. In my mind, I knew how to do it. We didn't rehearse any of it.
Oh, no way.
No, we didn't rehearse any of it. And he was like, I'm going to go to some places. I'm like, fucking let's do it. And I think that's more or less what he said. He's like, I'm going to go to some places. And I'm like, let's just do it. I remember actually Brendan, first time I ever met Brendan Schaub, he came up to me. He's like, hey, bro, I was watching this thing, like, with this reporter. How the fuck did you knock that guy out? And I'm like, wow. Like, yeah. Yeah.
Only Shaw would have believed it that much too.
Well, and this was at the time. This was like within
no way.
2-3 months of it, maybe even a month or two of it. So it was airing on TV. So he saw it like in the context of television.
Oh, that's awesome.
The character that I played with my band, part of the game was creating things like that, which is sort of why, I'm just over it. Like, I'll leave you guys with this because I find this interesting. The game of creating conflict, controversy, beef, all of that kind of stuff. If you ever do it by accident, even if you do it by accident will be best, because if you do it honestly, you're mad about something, you're in a bad mood, you'll find that it actually grows all of your platforms. So people will say, I hate you, I like the other guy, or fuck you, you suck, but all your shit will grow. You get hits on all of your YouTube and all your platforms. Just if you don't care, or it doesn't bother you, or you don't have a distaste for the drama. I have developed one over time. I really don't like that. I don't like the feeling of it. I don't like putting it on and having people see it too much. Because I feel like it does the world a disservice if everyone thinks it's normal to call each other names and to be mean and stuff in a world where there's so much cool shit you could do with your time. I find it's not a good thing, but when I've done it, my shit all grows. Like all your stuff grows. So I see why people do it on purpose, because it rewards them. If Jake Paul says bad shit about Ben Askren, and he says it back, both their shit grows. People start watching, right? So Max Kellerman is a very, very good sports broadcaster and a very good boxing broadcaster. Somewhere in the last 10 years, he realized saying extreme things didn't matter. He's like, Conor McGregor will not land one meaningful punch. All this shit grew. It didn't matter whether he did or not. It was all going to help him. In fact, when I was like, Conor McGregor is going to knock out Floyd Mayweather, that probably grew my shit by 40%. Everything. And if anyone ever brings it up, I know they literally would have never consumed anything of mine ever in my whole life other than had they come across that. Absolutely. So they're somebody who loves that kind of shit. But I don't like it. I don't think it's good. I don't think, in reality, I know that we will all benefit more if we truthfully examine the chaos theory and the complexity of fighting and how unpredictable it truly is. If I dedicate myself to that, I think that will be a more meaningful thing to leave behind than that. Max Kellerman said, I just saw the other day, years ago, he said something about Tom Brady, who I guess is like the best quarterback ever, and how he was going to suck within 2 years. He said this 4 years ago. And then it popped up again. And I saw it, and I'm like, see, Max Kellerman knows that this all helps him. Stephen A. Smith, same thing. He says provocative shit, that all of them do it. There's nothing wrong with it. I just don't like it. And in the long run, by moving away from it and towards more difficult or sometimes abstract or sometimes, pointless things, but shit I like, has slowly grown me to the point that I have a much better, stronger kind of a base of my business where I can actually explore things I like and talk about shit I like with you guys. I don't have to just talk within the narratives, but I think it could have happened faster. I'd have made more money. I maybe would have got bigger opportunities if I went the other way. But this way took longer, but I like it better, and I have a much happier, I feel like real connection to what I do, and I love it, and I feel like I'm doing something that matters to me. But it was harder. I think it was slower, but I like it more. So, but that's a game that people should be careful when they play, because it can connect. Colby Covington didn't think about what 2021 might be like, how people would look at him when he has children, what people will say about him with bikinis saying semi-racist shit. He doesn't think about what that will mean in the future. He thinks it just gives him only benefit now, but it may not, you know, like it may not. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky thing, but it's an interesting thing. Interesting.
Definitely. On that note, though, we do appreciate your time greatly. You are a great conversationalist. I've heard it's been said before, the Canadian Joe Rogan. If you take it as a compliment, we'll reiterate it. You are just a worldwide superstar at this point. So awesome to have you on, Robin Black.
You are the first person that we've had on that my wife actually knew of. And she knew of you from being a musician, from being on my
That's so cool.
from having all before. So it was great to be able to actually have that link on there as well.
We have an NBA champion, Sage Northcutt, so there's some big names.
Yeah. Biggest name so far, cool. Robin Black.
Yeah, well, thank you. But, you know, honestly, people do say that sometimes to Canadian Joe Rogan. And honestly, that is one of the greatest compliments anyone could ever give me, ever. Because Joe's a fucking gem of a human. Not just great at what he does, but a really kind and generous and cool human. So I take that as a massive compliment. Thank you. Thanks, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome, and we appreciate it too, Robin. All the best.
Okay. Enjoy the hostilities, my friends.
Likewise. Bye now.
Bye.